So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about healing and transformation and how they apply to mindfulness. So generally we start by looking outside of ourselves for any kind of healing or transformation. And that's not really our fault because in our culture we are told from day one that we lack. We are broken, we need to be fixed, we need to improve. Um, we're not the best we could be. And so we start off from this point where I inherently lack and I need to get fixed, get well, get better, improve, become perfect, etc. Not only in the material world, but in the spiritual world, in the world of self-awareness, I need to improve. And so we go looking outside for that. And in the kind of therapeutic or spiritual world, we go looking for helpers, healers, gurus, teachers, courses, books, techniques, practices, and things like that. Which, of course, help. They help. I wouldn't be here right now if I hadn't have received help from various avenues outside of myself. But the real healing, the real transformation only happens when we become able to stand our own ground, stand on our own 2 feet, stand within our own suffering, our own brokenness, our own lack. That's when the real healing happens. And that's when the real healing happens, because once we start to stop looking for help outside, knowing that the only real help is going to come from me, then we stop looking for crutches, we stop looking for kind of ways out, we stop looking for ways out. And because this is, important, because as long as you are alive, there's going to be some degree of suffering. Just because you have a mind and a body and emotions which are ever-changing within an ever-changing world. You are not in control of that, because if we were, well, there's no problem. There's no problem then, because if I'm in control, well, mind only be happy, body always feel great, emotions always joyful or at least neutral. World, do as I say, fantastic, no problem. No, everything about us on the chair is moving and shifting, and it follows its own nature. It follows its own nature, and this body we have here right now ultimately is going to return. It's going to return into nature, the nature it came from. So as healed or as fixed or as perfect as we feel or believe ourselves to be, there's always going to be something new to deal with, something new to sit with. So there is no way out. There's no way out. As long as you're here, there's no way out. There is a way in. There is a way in. Many of us spend our lives focused on the way out. And then something will catch up with us and we'll leap onto something else to avoid it or to kind of help it. That's what we do. We leap around. The way in is much more. It's much more of a shift. And so we just come back. We come back to what's here, and what's here is often suffering, trauma, grief, anger, rage, confusion. That's it. That's what's here. And rather trying to fix it, which is a subtle kind of resistance. It's a subtle kind of aggression. Go away. I want to be perfect. You're in the way. Grief, anger, confusion. You're in the way. Go away. There's our suffering. So what we do in mindfulness is we discover how to be with the human experience without adding resistance to it. How can we welcome and include our suffering without stirring it up, pushing against it? As long as we push and pull against it, it's going to have momentum, it's going to stay. As long as we try to control our experience, it's going to fight back. So instead we kind of develop this radical acceptance, a radical yes towards our experience. It doesn't mean you have to like it. It doesn't mean you have to like it. But it means we learn how to be with it. One Zen master says, hell is not a punishment. Hell is training. Okay? It doesn't last. You can learn and discover how to be with it, how to ride hell. Okay? And what comes out the other side is insight, freedom, courage, growth, evolution, transformation. If you avoid hell, then you avoid hell. Nothing ever happens. Okay? So we learn how to sit in hell. Sit with hell. And that's where the healing happens. The word healing means to make whole, to be complete, total. You don't have to go far to find that completeness, that totality, that wholeness. We tend to have the opinion in the West that we are a fixed, permanent self that needs to be helped and healed. And until that happens, we'll never be happy, we'll never be enlightened, we'll never be awake. You know, we need to be perfect in order to awaken. No, we don't. No, we don't. Just by coming home to the moment, we can get that sense of freedom and being whole and being one. One includes everything. The whole includes everything. Once we realize that totality includes suffering, totality includes grief, totality includes not feeling total, not feeling healed, then they fall away as obstacles. You know, they're not things I need to fight tooth and nail to get rid of. They are just momentary expressions of totality. Grief is a momentary, real-time experience of the universe happening. It's an expression. It's not something that needs to be fixed necessarily. Just like a tree, you know, if a tree is all gnarled and bendy because of the wind, we don't need to fix that. That's just a tree. It has the same treeness or tree nature as the tall straight pines. It's just a different expression of what a tree can do. Likewise, the human experience has good, bad, ugly, stuff we like, stuff we don't like. That's it. It's all whole. It's already complete as it is. And what we need to realize maybe is that we don't have to like everything. You know, we can broaden our ability to be with the different flavors of our experience without trying to get rid of parts of it. And of course, we can't get rid of certain parts of it. You know, death and decay, change and impermanence. That is the human experience. And much of our suffering comes from our attempt to get rid of those aspects. You know, kind of staying on one end of the spectrum. We can't. So by welcoming more, you become more, you become bigger, you become more able to hold heaven and hell in your hands without being dragged into it, without feeling stuck at one end of the spectrum. You know, by experiencing heaven on the chair, you can be with hell. By experiencing hell, well, there's the gateway to heaven. Okay, and that gateway is here and now, as the present moment. So we no longer need to run around being healed or helped by other people, by, you know, all these different methods. They are helpful, but they are not cures. In fact, there's no cure. There's no cure to the human experience. There's just being the human experience. Okay, it takes courage. It takes a new way of understanding ourselves. That we are not a little fixed self that needs to be helped, that must be perfect before enlightenment can happen. Rather, there is no fixed self. There's a flow from moment to moment of life happening. That's what you are. There's nothing fixed about you. You are not the same person you were when you started watching this video. Because all of that is gone. It is unfindable. And all that's left is this moment, which has just vanished. Okay? So there are just these constant arisings and passings away. This constant flow. No healing needs to take place in this flow. You know, it's all just dropping away. It's appearing and dropping away, appearing and dropping away. There's nothing in this that needs to get fixed. In fact, the nature of this is flow. The river does not need to heal because there's nothing in it that needs to heal. That's why we can say, well, who needs to be healed? Who needs to be fixed? Who is it that needs enlightenment? We can't find that person. So sometimes when I work with people who are really working with stuff, they are really working at welcoming and being with really difficult stuff. Often at some point they will say, and they will say it almost nervously, they will say, maybe it doesn't need to be fixed. Okay. Maybe to be happy, that doesn't need to go away. Wow, okay. So there's a shift there. Sometimes we can work with things and it will heal or melt or kind of become more integrated into our experience. Yeah, that happens. Other times we can bash tooth and nail at something that's not going to go away. Imagine you have arthritis, okay? You have a condition that's the way it is now, okay? And there are certain ways of being with it which will lessen the suffering around it, but you have it. We can't say, oh, I'm only going to be happy when arthritis goes away. I can only be enlightened when arthritis goes away. Well, it's never going to happen then. So instead what we can learn to do is accept that we have this condition and work with it as best we can, but also realize that in spite of that, in the midst of that, I can be free, I can be awake, I can be mindful, I can be present. It's not an obstacle. In fact, it gives me an edge. It wakes me up. So that's what suffering does. If we use it wisely, if we work with it, it wakes us up, it gives us an edge. And then maybe we can discover that, oh yeah, it didn't need to go away for me to experience freedom. Otherwise, if I'm waiting to be perfect, I'm going to wait my whole life. And maybe we've had those moments of perfection, but they didn't last. And they didn't last not because we started doing something wrong. Oh, no, I've lost it. Finding it and losing it is part of the flow. Okay? So we're not going to stay perfect. Even if you go into some deep samadhi state for 3 weeks, at some point you've got to come back and the mind kicks in. Okay? So this isn't about escaping, this is about the way in, the way through, the way to ride the nitty-gritty of our human experience and find freedom within it. Okay? And realize that everything is just an expression of the whole. Not that we need to find the whole and become it. You are the whole, you are the totality, you are the freedom on the chair. And in fact, human nature is free. Thoughts come and go like clouds through the sky. Emotions rise and fall in the body like waves across the ocean. Our circumstances changes and moves like wind, through the trees. This is all just movement, flow. There's nothing in that needs to be fixed or perfect. That would be a solid thing. We've yet to find a solid thing. Okay? So for me, healing is not something you necessarily need to go and get. The deepest healing, certainly from my own experience, comes from the ability to stand our ground in the present moment and realize that everything is constantly arising and falling away. And there's no lack there. Okay? So that's what I would ask you to do or invite you to do is spend more time observing and being with your present moment experience, being with your suffering, holding your suffering in radical acceptance, allowing yourself to feel what needs to be felt. Okay? We don't like feeling in this culture. We are terrified of feeling. Well, feeling is the only way something will change or dissipate or transform. By dropping down into the body and feeling it, welcoming it, saying yes to it. Not so it goes away, but so that we realize this is a flavor and it has a wisdom to it. Everything has a wisdom to it if we're willing to feel it, if we're willing to stop and allow it to be here.